All right, hello, hello. We got a packed room tonight, but I am excited. Thank you for being here. We're going to have a fairly casual conversation today with some amazing people and hopefully some opportunities for you to explore. My name is Adriana Ernstberger. I am the chair of History and Global Studies. I am an Africanist by training, and my studies have typically focused on global women's movements and women's tertiary education in the global south. So for those of you who aren't in my classes, that would be Africa, Latin America, East Asia areas, and Caribbean. So, not that any of you care about that, but any of you going to grad school or in grad school know that's the elevator speech you learn, and you'll for the rest of your life say these things. And no one cares if your mother, but you'll still say it. So I'm going to introduce our Director of Global Prestige Awards, Dr. Westfall. She's going to give you, just at the beginning now, some insights and opportunities that you could be thinking about for the future. And then we will start with our fabulous panel. Dr. Westfall.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Dr. Westfall. I'm an Associate Professor of German here at Marian University. And I'm here and in this capacity because of my time abroad. I was a Fulbrighter in 2002, 2003, Fulbright ETA, the English Teaching Assistantship Award, and had spent, in total, spent many years living and working in Germany. So that's why I'm here today. So I'm excited to hear our presenters' paths. In addition to, the Fulbright Award has two opportunities: a scholarship, if you're interested in doing a master's degree abroad, or just a year of research as a graduate student. That's a Fulbright opportunity. And also what many of our students have done, who have done the Fulbright, the majority have done an English teaching assistantship for a 10-month period in another country. There are other opportunities that are like this, as an English teaching assistantship to Korea, EPIC, JET to Japan, the USTA Fulbright that Kate did to Austria, the Meddeas program to Spain. Spain also has a program through the Ministry of Education that is also assisting in the English classroom. So you can see there are many, many different opportunities. It's important to think about this before your senior year, because the deadlines are quite early. They're coming up right now. So students are often surprised about how early the deadlines are. In addition, there are other opportunities, such as the Rhodes Scholarship, that's specifically to Oxford in England. And we have two presenters to talk about the Rangel Scholarship and Pickering Scholarship. So just know there are many opportunities, and I'm excited to help you and guide you on this path, whichever one that you may choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Westfall. Before I start with our introductions, I also want to speak to just kind of the makeup of this panel, which I will claim was entirely intentional and planned, is that we have two Marian alums, or people from our own backyard here, who have joined us, who at least one of them had in class for basically 4 years of his life. Good. Yeah, pretty often. And then Dr. Bueller, wave your hand, I'm not gonna make you stand up, yep. Dr. Bueller, who started here last year from Miami-Dade, and we have two of her alumni here as well. So you're gonna get some experiences here for people from different educational backgrounds and have gone and done some different things. I'm gonna ask them some questions, let them have an opportunity to speak. You'll have plenty of time to ask questions afterwards, and then I'll talk a little bit about a program that you guys might be interested in to Tanzania at the very end. All right, you guys ready? Ready to rock and roll? All right, I didn't want to do bios and read them and whatnot, so I'm gonna let you introduce yourselves. If you can, let's start down with Alex. If you can just introduce yourself, tell us your name, what your Global Prestige Award was, the one you received, and where you went.
Like she said, my name is Alexander Fauber, or Alex. I got the Meddeas Award, and I was in Barcelona, Spain, teaching English to students at Viaro Global School, which is a very nice and preppy school on the northern suburbs of Barcelona.
Hello, my name is Kate Grabrowski, and I received the Fulbright Austria U.S. Teaching Assistantship where I taught in Telfs, which is a tiny little village right outside of Innsbruck in Austria. And that's where I was there for 9 months teaching English to about students from ranging ages of 10 to 18.
Great, my name is Josh. I received the Fulbright English Teaching Assistantship to Azerbaijan. I was the first one to serve in a regional city outside of the capital. They told me I was the guinea pig from when I started, and had an amazing experience living in, they call it a city. I would say it's a town here in the US. It's a small town called Lankaran on the southeast coast, about 30 minutes away from the border with Iran. Was teaching university students. And currently I'm a Rangel Fellow. And the Rangel Fellowship is a State Department funded program that covers the cost of graduate school, as well as 2 internships, one in Congress and one at an embassy abroad while you're in graduate school. And when I graduate, I'll be joining the US Foreign Service for at least 5 years.
Hello? Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Brenda. After I graduated from Georgetown in 2021, I received, sorry I have a cough. I received a Princeton in Africa fellowship that took me to Nairobi. I was working for the International Livestock Research Institute. I was there for 3 months because this occurred during COVID. So I was mostly remote until we were able to transition in country. After my Princeton in Africa award, I got the Fulbright Taiwan Award and the Pickering Fellowship Award the same year, and I deferred my Pickering Fellowship start date for a year to pursue my Fulbright Taiwan Award. So I was there for about 8-ish months teaching middle school, which was an adventure. I was in a small island called Penghu off of the island of Taiwan, and now I'm back in grad school also with Josh. As a part of the Pickering Fellowship, when I graduate, I will have a job with the U.S. Foreign Service as long as I adhere to all the other requirements. And yeah.
That's great. Alex and Kate, can you tell us what you're doing now?
So currently I am a middle school teacher. It's an adventure at Immaculate Heart of Mary. It's just south of Robertville in Indianapolis. And I teach social studies, 7th and 8th grade.
I am currently in my first year at law school at IU McKinney. I just finished my 6th week today, so still surviving.
So a piece I want to, before the next question, I want to make sure that you guys, there's all these amazing things. Did any of you think that that was the path you were going to take when you started college? Okay, and the other piece I want you guys to keep in mind is that you heard some really prestigious names, some Ivy League universities, top tier law schools. Don't let Alex snowball you here. He's just pretending he's not going to get the PhD, and I already know the 3 schools he's going to apply to, and he's likely going to Ivy too. As you are listening to them, I also want you to remember, and we're going to talk a little bit more later, about the impact that these awards had. We have 2 students who started their college career where? Where did you start your college career?
Miami-Dade College.
Miami-Dade College, and what is Miami-Dade College?
A community college.
What's the percentage of commuters?
100.
Okay. Is this a school that is known for world-leading graduate studies professionals after they are completed?
I don't think they have a graduate program.
And the transition rate. These awards that they pursued are going to have a major impact. Same thing over here, McKinney Law School and applications and future PhD pieces. These awards that they pursued are directly tied. So as you're listening to all these important things, and especially my Georgetown twins here, and Columbia undergrad and Georgetown undergrad, don't get any senses of imposter syndrome. These are people who come from very similar backgrounds to most of you, as I know most of you, and it's these awards and pursuing these awards and experiences that have made them extremely competitive for all the next adventures they're having. So, just as a side note. All right, can you guys talk about, we'll start with Brenda this time, what kind of sparked your interest in pursuing the Global Prestige Award? When did you find out about it? Did you come out of the womb thinking Pickering, that's for me? Kind of talk to us a little bit about that journey that got you up to applying.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I wanted to just reiterate what you were saying before. This is not something that I grew up wanting to do, which I think is really important to really emphasize that perspective, because I think perhaps, especially with imposter syndrome, some people might think that you have to start extremely early in order to be able to pursue these kinds of careers, and that's not necessarily the case. I didn't even know that I wanted to transfer to Georgetown when I was at community college with Professor Bueller. And I think really it was, well, I started off as a wildlife biology major, I should mention that, and I am not a biology or science person, but I was taking American federal government with Dr. B, and I was also taking an international relations class, and I received my first ever award to go abroad at Miami-Dade. It was the Global Citizenship Alliance to Austria, and just being in a different country, seeing a different culture, a different worldview, seeing the way that people abroad perceive the United States. I think this is really when I realized, you know what, I have ideas about the world and I think I want to explore that a little bit more. And that's when I started to be much more intentional about the classes that I started to take. So I think number one, mentorship is extremely important. And what ultimately led me to pursue the rest of these scholarships is, number one, it's an incredible opportunity if you're not sure what your next step is going to be, because you get to learn a lot about another culture, and through that, a lot about yourself. Even learning what you don't like is incredibly informative in terms of helping you figure out where you end up, where you want to end up. I didn't have a lot of experience in Taiwan or any country in Asia because most of my background was the US, Middle East, and I had a little bit of experience in Nairobi. So I wanted to just try to fill in the gaps, and I think that's something I've been very intentional about as well, with choosing these awards and like the countries that I apply for.
For me, my interest kind of in like global affairs, international affairs, it's something that kind of started in high school. So I grew up, my family's Lebanese and Cuban, so just always grew up hearing about what was happening in those countries. And that just always, from a young age, sparked, like, I loved history. When I got into high school, I was like, I want to be an anthropologist, I want to be Indiana Jones, travel the world, learn about cultures. It wasn't until one of my professors gave me like an international relations textbook. He said, oh, you should maybe look into this, that I found kind of that perfect mix of everything that I liked, the religion, the history, the politics of everything. And it wasn't until Dr. B, when I started going to college at Miami-Dade College, that I found a mentor who told me, hey, you can pursue this career, because I think it can be a little daunting. It's a very general degree, it's a very general field, there's a lot of different avenues you can take. But when you find those mentors, when you find those people that'll support you, and you have an interest in it, it, for me, was everything. And that was kind of when everything came together, and I was like, I want to be a foreign service officer. I want to represent like the country that gave a home to my family, and I also want to pursue kind of my own intellectual interests in anthropology, history, all that stuff. So yeah, from an early, like I think, yeah, my freshman year was when I met with the diplomat in residence and heard about Rangel. And she told me, she was like, hey, these guys have done a lot, look at their bios, like, you better start doing stuff if you see yourself doing this in the future. And that's exactly what I did. So it's important to have kind of a really high goal in mind, like when you're pursuing these things, because then you start finding those opportunities, you start taking those more challenging roles, jobs, internships, any opportunity to get. You might, what's the quote? You aim for the stars, you'll land on the moon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As I'm thinking about my answer, I go back and forth thinking if I always knew that I would have gone and done a Fulbright in Austria or not. And a part of me thinks that I always did. And in high school, I worked at a Holocaust museum where I got to travel with a Holocaust survivor, Eva Kor, where I got to go to Auschwitz and to travel around Poland with her. And then a few years later, I went on a pilgrimage to to Italy, and those kind of opened my eyes that, you know, there's more to life than the borders of the United States. But then I came to Marian and I became a business major, and I was like, you know what, nothing about traveling. And so I was a business major here, and then I was like, you know what, this is not for me. And that's when I switched to political science, and I started taking German classes with Dr. Westfall, and I honestly thought I was just going to take one German class just to, you know, get that credit. And
Everyone thinks they're only going to take one German class when they meet Wendy.
yeah, I was like, yeah, we're just going to check that off the list and then leave. And then no, I ended up getting a minor, and I had a class with Dr. Westfall pretty much my entire time here at Marian. And you know, having Dr. Westfall as a mentor was absolutely wonderful, and through that I was able to study abroad in Austria, kind of during COVID, which was very tough and wonderful experience, but really opened my eyes to, you know what, you know, traveling, international affairs, stuff like this is really a passion of mine. And so when I returned, I started hearing about, you know, Fulbright, USTA, and started thinking that's what I want to do when I graduate, because even now, I'm in law school, I don't know what I want to do when I graduate law school. So I'm still kind of in that limbo, but I definitely didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated from Marian, and so it was a perfect gap year for me, because I knew I wanted to go to law school, but I knew I wanted some sort of buffer, and so taking that year gap to go to a foreign country, teach English, was just a perfect way to broaden my horizons and to gain that extra experience and those opportunities.
Yeah, I didn't think I was ever going to leave the U.S. I'm just not a big travel person, but the thing that brought upon my want to travel was needing credits for a Spanish minor, because someone who no longer worked here messed up my schedule and didn't realize that I needed more Spanish credits than I had space for in my schedule. And so during COVID, Dr. Westfall helped me find a program. I went to Spain to get 2 Spanish credits, and I ended up partying most days, but that's okay, I still got the credits. And it was really fun, and it's just it felt incomplete because I was only there for a month during COVID, and me and Kate were dating at this point, and she was like, I want to do this Fulbright thing, you should do it too. And I was like, I don't know, maybe. I didn't get Fulbright, but I did obviously get the Meddeas program, and I loved it. It's what's led me to teach where I'm teaching today. I never thought I'd work at a Catholic school. I didn't grow up Catholic, but working at a Catholic school in Spain, I loved it, and just the ethos and the formation of the students was something that it really struck a nerve with me. Nerve? No, that's not right. Struck a chord. And I really enjoyed it, and so I have continued that now, working at a middle school, which was not my first option, but still love every day.
Thank you. And notice again, just quickly, just the number. So how many awards did you apply for total? Or did you only apply for Fulbright?
Fulbright, Princeton in Africa, Fulbright, Princeton in Africa, Pickering, and I applied to Princeton in Asia, Princeton in Latin America, got rejected from both. There was a lot more rejections than there were
That's the keys. So you applied for 5 or 6, and you got the 3 along the way. How many did you apply for total, Josh, versus how many you got?
Yeah, like 6 or 8, yeah.
Kate, are you gonna be the rock star who applied for 1 and got 1?
I applied to 2, and I got both of those.
There you go. But notice that trajectory as well. The importance of applying for multiple places. It's not about having a backup. It's about acknowledging that anyone you're going to be competing against in these spaces, there's lots of these applications that have nothing to do with how amazing you are, and it has to do with the crop of applicants at the time. And I remember when the day Alex found out he did not get the Fulbright, which is as funny to me as the first day he had a class with me as a freshman and said he really was only interested in American history, had no desire to take any other world history classes, and is now teaching African history, right? And
it's 7th and 8th grade social studies. So 7th grade is geography, economy, government, and history of Africa, Asia, and Australia. And 8th grade is U.S. history from 1492 to 1877.
Nice, so 50% of your job is world. I like it. But I remember the day he didn't get it, and he was so upset, and then dove right into the next set of applicants. And so I just hope you guys kind of take that away. Can you talk about your in-country experience? I'm going to keep it super short and brief so people have plenty of time for questions, but tell me what was your high, what was your low?
My high was my first day, or my low was my first day there. So I was in Barcelona. Everyone out there might think they speak Spanish in Barcelona, which they do, but they also like to speak Catalan, which is, people say it's just the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. So my first day there was rough. They spoke a different dialect of Spanish than I had learned with, being in the United States. We learn, Latin American Spanish, typically. And I was jet lagged, I was tired. It was my first day was awful, and then later in the first week I got food poisoning, and so it was pretty bad. But my high was lunch every day, which sounds ridiculous, but authentic Spanish food, served family style, for free, and three courses basically every day, and it was a great time to talk to my coworkers, learn more about Catalan culture, Spanish culture, the whole 9 yards. It was a phenomenal experience that I wouldn't trade.
Low for me would also be the first day. It's just a huge transition. Even though you prepare for it, you get your residence card or your visa, whatever you need to, whatever country you're going to. Like you're ready and you leave. But once I landed, I was so jet lagged, and I just remember I couldn't sleep. And I remember texting my mom. I was crying, and I was like, "I'm here for the next 9 months. I don't know if I can do this." And she basically was like, "No, like you can do this. Like you prepared for this. This is what you wanted for. This is what you wanted. This is what you prayed for, and you got it. And so now you're here. So it's all good." And so it was just that night, super low. But then next morning, woke up, had a wonderful Austrian breakfast, great bread, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. So it was just that first night, that big transition. But my high would be, apart from the actual teaching, which was great, being in front of the classroom and building that rapport with my students, a high for me was being able to travel. I was able to meet other English teaching assistants, and pretty much every weekend we went to a new country or a new city. In the 9 months that I was there, I was able to travel to 17 countries. Which I still am kind of amazed about myself. But yeah, definitely taking those weekends to go see other countries that I probably will never be able to, or I shouldn't say never. Maybe I'll return to them someday. But yeah.
So, like the other panelists, I would say my low was well beyond the first night. It was like the first 2 or 3 weeks. I applied to Azerbaijan. As I'm sure if you're looking at the Fulbright applications, they say languages, recommended, some of them say required. They say recommended, speak beginner Azerbaijani or speak beginner Russian. I was like, you know what? I made a whole application. I want to learn. I want to go there to immerse myself. And within the first night, I was like, wow, I got exactly what I asked for. Being alone in a regional city where I didn't know how to get my groceries. I would get in a taxi and have to make hand signals to get to somewhere on a Google map that was not there. It was, and not even starting with school, with my schedule. I didn't have a set schedule until November, and I got there in September. But beyond all of that, just the highs were really, after that, I made such a great community with my students. I was teaching college students that were similar age to me. All of them would after class be like, hey, do you want to get dinner? Do you want to see this side of town? Hey, do you want to stay at my place in a village nearby? It became an issue of almost I had to start saying, I couldn't say yes to everything because I didn't have enough time in a day. From all the requests I was getting, I had just such, it's cliche, but yeah, transformative experience for someone who had studied international relations and political science, but to be in a foreign country and understand, to be in a developing country, in an authoritarian country, to understand what life is like in these places, very unique experience.
Is Azerbaijani a Cyrillic? Do you use a Cyrillic alphabet as well?
Not anymore. No, it's Latin.
Nice.
But yeah, as anyone who's tried learning a Romance language, it doesn't matter much.
Yeah, Russia, let me tell you, that Cyrillic, that's special. First time you can't actually read the signs, because everywhere in the world we're used to being Latin-based, and something will either be in English or French or Spanish, you can guess. Yeah, when you don't have an idea what that letter is, you do a lot of Russian charades.
Da.
Da. Niet.
And for me, I feel like I had so many more highs than I had lows. I already knew, I was very fortunate that I knew exactly what was going to come right after. I knew that I was going to go to graduate school. I'd already gotten in and I deferred for a year. But I think, and this is what I would want to relate to you guys as well, is that these fellowships are technically low commitment in the sense that you're there for 1, maybe 2 years. So this isn't a 10-year contract that you're signing. You're not staying there working to try to get tenure. You know, this isn't, for me, I don't consider it real life in the sense that I have the same pressures that I do back home when I have all of these other responsibilities weighing down on me. So these are incredible opportunities that are generally mostly funded for you to go and learn something about the world, about yourself, and then bring it back, and you're sharing the culture and vice versa. So for me, I honestly did not have many lows in Taiwan. I think the high was just being able to pause and take it all in, and just realize that this is a moment for me to just figure things out, so to speak. And for my lows, I got in a minor scooter accident there. I was fine, it's good, it's all right. I had surgery, it was like nothing crazy. But
No one who's going to Tanzania is allowed to ride the boda-bodas, just as a side note.
Yes, but you know, just a good reminder that we're not invincible. We are human, we have to be careful even when we're abroad. And if things do happen, health insurance is usually pretty good in some of these parts of the world and very affordable as well. So it was a very affordable surgery.
Thank you for that. I do remember Dr. Bueller's response when she got a picture of the minor skin graft-inducing injury to your leg. It didn't go over so cool, but you did well. It was fabulous. You started to hint at this as well, so I'm going to start at the end, and if you have something else at the end, you can add or not. If you were giving one piece of advice, or multiple pieces, but if you're giving some advice, what's a message you want for future students to be thinking about when evaluating whether this is something they want to pursue?
Like she said, it's not real life. It's a wonderful experience just to go and live one year abroad, 9 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever it is. And a lot of these programs you can go a second year if you really like it, and some of them you can even just go home if you hate it. So don't feel like you're trapped if you choose to go down this path. It's a little scary how easy it is to walk away. There were several people in the Meddeas program that left at Christmas. We had Christmas break and they were just like, okay, this isn't for me, I'm going home. And you know, it was good for them. They enjoyed their 3 months, but just it wasn't for them. And so don't feel like this is a huge daunting thing that you really have to commit to. At least for the Meddeas, I don't know about other programs, it was relatively easy to walk away.
My advice is just do it. The people who are here, you obviously have some thought, inkling that maybe this is maybe what I want to do. And if there's even a small part of you that's like, maybe I want to do this, just submit your application, just with the hope that you might get it. Even if you want to go to grad school, or you want to do X, Y, Z, or maybe you just want to start real life and start making money. You'll never be able to do this again. Life will still be there when you're done with this. There's a part of me that is regretting coming to law school after only doing 1 year. I wish I was going back for a second year. But I told myself that, you have to go back to the real world. But I went into that. But anyway, but you have the opportunity just after you graduate from Marian, just do it. Submit the application. The worst they can say is no.
Yeah, and just to echo all that too, like, there are a few experiences you'll get in life where you can just live in another community, in another culture, in another country with so little responsibility, really. Like, each Fulbright program is a little bit different, but just so you have an idea, I only had to work minimum 15 hours a week.
Mine was 13 hours, so it's...
Yeah, and I know in Germany, the Fulbright Germany, 12, yeah, it was like a government limit of 12. They're, like, the skills you gain from understanding how to work with people from other cultures, how to adapt. Like now I feel like you could throw me anywhere. I survived those few weeks, like in Lancron, like I feel like I'm ready to take on anywhere, and I just feel more confident starting graduate school, starting whatever endeavors we start after. There are few opportunities that you can find to do that. So I would say if you're considering it, apply. And if you don't get it the first time, I applied right out of college. I didn't get accepted to any of the programs I applied for. Thankfully, it was a blessing with Fulbright. I applied to Myanmar, and like 2 months after my rejection, the whole coup happened. So very happy that didn't work out. But don't be discouraged. If first time doesn't work, Rangel as well. First time I applied, I did not get it. It took me a second try. So don't be discouraged if some of these programs don't work out the first time.
And I will just offer the caveat. These are low responsibility opportunities, but it is a huge responsibility to travel to a different community and engage with that community responsibly, ethically, to understand your position as a person from the United States in these communities. So it's not all, it's not all fun party either. That's not exactly what I would want you to take away from this, even though there is tons of opportunity for fun. There's also, it is a commitment to a great extent, and I would challenge you to really jump on that and commit to whatever time frame it is, whether it's a year, 2 years, 6 months, 3 months, but really commit and try to get through the discomfort phase, because as Josh said, his first few weeks were not very comfortable, but I remember I visited him in Azerbaijan after about 5 or 6 months, and he was just like fluent, so it was because he was just in a community where he had to figure it out, and sometimes having to figure it out is honestly the greatest blessing. So I think it's not all fun and games, but there is a lot of fun, and it's really well worth it if you commit to taking that leap.
Could I just really quick to add? Yeah, I meant that's a really great point, and I think that is why Fulbright, partially for some countries like Germany, they can't work for more than 12 hours because of education laws. But the big reason why is they want you to engage in the community. They don't want you to just be in a classroom all day at a university all day. They want you to step outside, make friends, get to know the community, learn the language of wherever you are. So that's a big reason why. Thank you for mentioning that.
I'm going to open it up for questions in just a minute. Just a couple pieces of data that I want to give you guys. I was reading this report this morning. They have done a longitudinal studies the last 10 years, and students who have received global prestige awards in their undergraduate or directly afterwards had a 97% acceptance rate to their top pick graduate program and or internships or career steps in that next step. 97% of the respondents, and it was about 3,000 people who responded, indicated that it was a central piece in that component. The other piece, and this should be big for anybody else who does not come from an extremely affluent family, you got money to burn, pay it, spend it as you want. But if you want to graduate with a graduate degree and not a lot of debt, 68% of students who had a global prestige award had zero graduate student loan debt when they finished their degrees. And that includes, by the way, medical schools, which is extremely rare to have medical schools, as Dr. Lowry can attest, have Fulbright scholarships or extreme scholarships. Almost exclusively, if they do, this is someone who has done and received a global prestige award, almost exclusively. The second piece I would give you is thinking about just where you want to go next. So whether I have future lawyers, future doctors, moms, social workers, all the career paces you want to go, These types of experiences are amazing. They're soul-changing. They are life-affirming, all the things. They are also vectors for you to be able to get to that next step. Every single person who's going to apply to law school or med school is going to have great LSAT scores. They're going to have a good GPA. They're going to have great MCATs. They probably did some clinical work or volunteered in a local shelter. You need to distinguish yourselves. And this is a really great way to either get paid or go for free and have a really great narrative and something that will distinguish you. Again, if you're interested, especially my future doctors, Dr. Lowry has sat on many admission committees for future doctors and can talk about one of the things that stands out almost always is what have you done abroad? What have you done that's different? What is a different story that you can tell? So things for you just to keep in mind. Let's open up the questions and see what you guys want to throw at them.
I've had the honor and privilege to review Fulbright teaching assistant applications for Fulbright, and they vary vastly. What avenues did you all use to help make sure that your application to these prestige awards was the best it could be?
Great question.
Wendy.
I'll answer. One was to start early. You can't write this type of essay or statement for Fulbright. It's 2 different long essays. You can't do that in like a week. You need a long time to really draft these. And I would say the biggest thing about these answer questions is about telling a story. You're not just regurgitating your resume and being like, I was president of this, and I was president of this, and I'm awesome. Which of course, like you want to like sprinkle that in every once in a while about how that fits into your story as a wonderful human being. But for me, it was all about telling a story of who I am, who I want to be, and how getting this Fulbright grant will help me reach those future goals. That's how I approached it.
And I just wanted to add a little bit to that. So yes, the Fulbright application is 2 essays, and one of them is a personal statement. The other one is a statement of grant purpose, if I'm not mistaken. And I would say my advice for you in terms of approaching those essays, I like to look at my applications as projects, and I like to think of them as a long-term thing. So like what you said, start early and get other people to review your essays. So I don't apply to anything unless I get somebody who I trust to be smarter than me to read them. And I usually ask Dr. B, I ask some other professors, I ask some of my friends that I trust, because they're gonna give me honest feedback, and that's exactly what you want. If your school has a fellowship office that offers help, and maybe if you have a writing center, use those. So don't go at it alone. Look at them as projects, and the essays should complement each other. I think that's a big one as well.
Yeah, and think about your application just as a whole. Make sure you're not going over the same stuff. Your personal statement should not regurgitate your resume. There's a resume part for that. Your personal statement should be their way of seeing who you are as a person. Like when I ask people to review my personal statements for Fulbright or for any other application, I don't ask like, is this good or is this bad? Is it me? Am I coming out in this essay? Because at the end of the day, people can write something, but if you can take out your name and put someone else's name, it's not a good personal statement, no matter how well written it is. It needs to show the application panel who you are uniquely as a person. And that statement of grant purpose, that's where you need to show you know your country that you're applying to, and you know the position you're applying to. Very special emphasis, because there's people who are experts, right, on the country they're applying to, but do they know what it's like to teach middle schoolers or university students? In that statement of grant purpose, show that you've done your research, show that you know exactly what the assignment that you're applying to entails. And even that could include like saying the native language there is a phonetic language, let's say. And like, oh, I have experience teaching like Spanish speakers, also another phonetic language. Oh, this language, they really struggle when they're learning English, learning how to say business terms. Oh, I would love to do a business term class. Show that you've done the research on the specific position, not just the country.
You guys must have had really good mentors. Awesome answers, and thank you for that question. I also want to add another piece here, and maybe this is simply showing my cards too much of my own imposter syndromes at different times. We always lean into when we talk about the next step for this, what you get out of this, right? And it's always who's going to be a doctor, who's going to be a lawyer, what's this major career piece that you're going to have. And we have 2 future foreign service, future ambassadors, rulers of the world. We have a future lawyer, maybe a judge advocate, maybe we have an attorney general down at the end of the table. And at the very end, we have what I would argue is the most important job, which is an educator of whatever age, and he's insane because he's doing middle school. But a future educator, and I still be willing to bet my dog that he ends up with a PhD. But don't limit this to, or if you're listening to this and you're going, I don't know if I want to go to grad school. I don't want to be a doctor. Ew, blood. If your ambition is to experience the world and see things, and what you want to do with the rest of your life is to mother or father. If you want to do, if you're called or you have a vocation that you want to do ministry, or you want to engage in a service-based dynamic, any of those pieces will be infused and strengthened by pursuing awards like this. Not just because you will get jobs and opportunities and funding to let you do cool things later, but because you will be a better mother, a better follower of Christ, a better follower of whatever divinity cycle or none that you have, a stronger teacher. And if none of that is even true, you'll be a better you. And so just keep those things in mind, is that these types of experiences are not just for this upper echelon of the 5 jobs that you're supposed to get. It is across the board in the kind of work that you can do. Other questions?
Joshua and Brenda, could you talk a little bit about your experience now in studying international studies? How long is your program? Like you're in Georgetown?
Yeah.
Yep. And talk a little bit about that.
So just general, like my studies, so.
How long, is it a master's program?
Yeah, it's a master's, 2 years. So both, Rangel and Pickering, they require you to do a 2 years master's within the US. My program is a global human development program, which is very fancy to say international development. Very econ focused, understanding like how do countries like raise standards of living, increase freedoms within countries, and doing so in an ethical way. And for me, I chose it just because it was a big challenge. I'm not a numbers guy. I got a degree, a very social science focused degree. I love history, I love political science. So I intentionally chose this because I wanted to get in those quantitative skills, like gain a new perspective on how I see the world. So.
And I am in the Master's of Science in Foreign Service program at Georgetown. It's also 2 years, and I chose it because I felt that it would give me more skills that I just didn't have. So I saw it as more of a skills-based degree, as opposed to other programs in other schools, which I also explored. So that's ultimately what drew me to Georgetown in that particular program. I want to plug in just really quick the Pickering and Rangels, because we've kind of mentioned them. So these are incredible programs that will fund your graduate schools. So if you want to go to graduate school for free and you're interested in the foreign service and diplomatic careers, something to look into.
Not just free, they pay you.
Well, you do get a stipend as well. So there are a lot of financial incentives. And it's an incredible opportunity. So if you're interested in that, we're happy to talk to you about that later.
And the Payne Fellowship.
And the Payne Fellowship if you're interested in USAID.
And then I saw you, Grace.
This is a question about the USTA program in Austria. What would the breakdown for your workload have been between lesson planning, actual classroom work, and then more admin type work?
So like I mentioned earlier, it's 13 hours a week, and you split your time between 2 or 3 schools. My 2 schools happened to be in the same building, which was wonderful. So usually you go to one school for 1 week, and then the next week you go to the other school. And most schools try to give you Fridays off because they know that U.S. teaching assistants love to travel, and so they like to give you that extra day. So I would say most weeks I worked from Monday to Thursday, and school started around 7:45, I would say. They like to, it's a little bit earlier in the day, and I usually was never at the school later than 1 p.m. Very short days. Some days I had 2 classes, so I'd be done at 10:30 in the morning, and I'm just done for the rest of the day. In terms of lesson planning, a big misconception that I had was that I have my own class and I'm teaching like this one set of like students. It's more of I am like the person for the whole English department, and I get to go to all of these different classes ranging from different levels of English, but also different ages. And I'm like never teaching them grammar. It's nothing to do with, here are the difference between the 3 theirs. It's nothing like that. None of that like boring English stuff. We're pretty much like the program is about being an ambassador for the United States. And so all my lessons had to do about the culture, about being an American. So the lesson I think my students loved the most was about American prom. They think prom is so cool. And so I had a whole lesson on prom. I put pictures of my own prom up there. They had to come up with promposals, like if they had prom, that was like my activity for the day. But that's definitely, in terms of like lesson planning, I wouldn't even call it that because I picked lessons that I personally like to talk about, like Christmas. Like it's just like things, like what does my family do for Christmas? A lesson on like who is Martin Luther King Jr., like stuff like that, like who are just influential Americans, things that I personally care about and want them to know. So it's definitely, I wouldn't even call it lesson planning because it was basically just having a class about passions that I have as an American citizen.
Grace? Yeah, good question. So I did not go to school to be a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I will not be a teacher. But you have an orientation, a week-long orientation before you get into it. So we had a week-long prepping of how to lesson plan. The orientation honestly makes it seem harder than it actually is of how to have class discipline and stuff. I would say that's the hardest part is if kids are off not doing what they're supposed to do is keeping everyone intact. But I definitely went in a little nervous as someone never in front of a classroom, but definitely having orientation through USTA was great. We had a practice run going in front of a classroom before we went to our own personal schools. And another thing is that you're not in the classroom alone. The actual teacher is in the room with you. So if anything actually bad happened, which it never did, and if something ever was to happen, if kids were not behaving well, the real teacher is there to do what they need to do as the teacher. So as someone who did not have an education background, I did not feel ill-prepared. So yeah, if I can do it, you can do it.
We also had training, part of the Meddeas program, and a really cool thing about the Meddeas program too is they enroll you into a university class for teaching. So I was a student at the International University of Catalonia, which is in Barcelona, and we had one class a week, roughly, some homework once every 2 weeks. Honestly, it was a pretty easy class. And it was mostly because I had done education classes here at Marian. I used a lot of the same assignments that I had previously done, changed it, a little bit for the requirements of the course. But it was really nice having, especially for my friends who didn't have a background in education, to take that class alongside teaching. Because they were able to come up with activities, and at the end of the program, if you pass the class, you get your TEFL certification, which is teaching English as a foreign language. So in addition to adding, Meddeas on my resume, I got to add a TEFL certification too, which I think definitely stood out when I was applying for jobs back here in the States, because about every job I applied for, I was a finalist as a fresh out of college teacher, 0 years of experience against veteran teachers. Meddeas and TEFL both really elevated my application to the level that I was considered for most jobs that I applied for.
So I've got a couple other points that I want to share real fast. If anybody has another question, I'll open up one more time at the end, and then we also will have all of them, they didn't volunteer, but they will, answer questions afterwards individually as well. One of the things that as an advice, I know Dr. Westfall would tell you this, and whether you want to do one of these programs later after graduation or not, but if you do, be thinking about studying abroad during your undergrad time as well. It will make you far more competitive. Dr. Westfall can get you down to the formula of the exact timing that is going to be the most attractive as an applicant. I think, what did you say, between 3 weeks or three weeks and 6 months? Yeah, see, look, I listen. But it will make you more competitive for these pieces, and you can do them in lots of ways. Remember that you don't have to have the answers. You don't have to have a plan. Again, notice at this table of global prestige, multiple global prestige award winners who are all pursuing careers and have a plan for their life that this has helped facilitate. Not all of them knew what they want. So you have Brenda types who are going to have a 3-page outline of their answers to the questions that are about, what their favorite color is, because they want to plan it out and project it. You're going to have Josh, who's going to laugh a lot more during it and end up in a lot more funny situations, but is kind of winging it. You got someone who's in law school and doesn't know what kind of law she wants to practice, which is one of the dirty secrets about grad school. You never know, often. And it's like your undergrad degree. You start off, I want to do econ, and then you go to econ class and cry. Oh, that was my story, sorry. Doctors, the number of doctors who go to med school without any idea what kind of medicine they're actually going to practice. We've even got first of all, one to teach high school, who's teaching middle school, and hasn't even accepted yet that he's going to get a PhD in the next couple of years. So you don't have to have the answers, and this is a great way to buy active and focused time to enrich yourself, enrich those around you, and help you find that narrative. So it doesn't have to be part of a master plan either. So I'm going to open up space for probably 2 more questions, and I see you, whose name I don't... Daniela. So I'm going to open up to Daniela, and then if I don't have another student, Dr. Westfall, and then I'll have one more announcement, and we will let you all escape for the night.
So what was your guys' housing, living situations, and how did that help you engage with the community that you were in?
Great question.
So I live with a friend of my parents. Just happened that my parents have friends that live in Barcelona who also have friends, and they had an open room in their apartment, and so I stayed with an interesting woman, but it was nice because I got to speak Spanish with her around the apartment, and it was $550 a month, including utilities, which in Barcelona is a pretty good deal, and I was in the middle of the city. Yeah, that's really all I got.
I would say housing was the biggest stressor for me going over to Austria, because that's the one thing that my program does not help you with. They basically just say, this is on you. They give you a lot of help with, getting your residence card and getting all of that. When it comes to housing, it's all on you. And so that's when for me and a lot of people in my program, it's when your mentor teachers really come in. So like I said, I was at 2 schools, so I had 2 mentor teachers. And I basically just, asked them if they had any housing recommendations. One teacher actually housed me for the first month that I was there. I lived with her and her family, which was awesome to live with an Austrian family, speak German, have the meals with them, and all of that. And then after that month, I moved. Actually, I lived in a monastery. I lived in a very tiny town. I wanted that very small, almost like cloistered, literally cloistered environment. And so I lived pretty much in the middle of nowhere, but it was absolutely stunning, right in the middle of the Alps. And so that was basically just using my mentor teachers. But of course, there's also apps and stuff that a lot of other people use, like Bege and other, if you're talking about Austria or Germany. But yeah, I would definitely say most of the people that I was with, they got it through their mentor teachers.
So yeah, each program is a little bit different on how they handle housing. For me, mine, it was a requirement for kind of my university contact to arrange my housing for me, to find me a place that had, you know, like a washing machine, AC, just some of the basic stuff, Wi-Fi. And it was a 3-bedroom apartment for myself. And you know, you might also have opportunities to live with a host family, that sort of thing. I was very adamant. I kind of wanted my space at night, but it was close to one of the campuses. But when it comes to community, it was great that I had like a little market that was walking distance away, that I became friends with all the people. They would say hi to me. I learned all my numbers in Azerbaijani because of the guy that ran the market there. One of my neighbors was like a taxi driver that would always pull up right in front of my place. When I needed to go to campus, I was a little further away. He just texted me this morning asking me how I was. We would also practice a lot of Azerbaijani. So yeah, when it comes to the community, really, it's up to you. It's on your own time. There's not going to be a direct path on how you engage with them, but the opportunities are there.
And Fulbright Taiwan, they handle your housing, but you do have to pay for it out of your own stipend, which is perfectly fine. For my Princeton and Africa Fellowship, I had to figure out housing on my own. In Nairobi, I will say it's good to be meticulous and it's good to be thorough. Because sometimes you're not going to have the opportunity to visit these places before you actually find somewhere to live. So it's good if you have contacts in the country to make sure that you can scope them out, make sure that everything is exactly as it should be before you make any formal commitments. So that would be my advice for them.
Dr. Westfall, last question, and then I'll wrap us up.
So I wanted to add to your comment about studying abroad before, that it's good to have this experience, something to write about, this encounter with other cultures. Also, every year I meet with some students who have in mind, I'd like to apply for Fulbright to Spain, but have only taken 1 semester of Spanish and don't have the minimum level of language requirements. So that's a shame when there's this desire to go to a certain country, but we have to start looking at, okay, what countries don't require any language ability when that starts to be the filter. So take advantage of your language learning opportunities in college as well.
Come see if you want to study abroad.
Yes, so see Dr. Westfall if you are interested in Global Prestige Awards. See Dr. soon-to-be Dr. Hinkle, who will be able to help you with study abroad opportunities, your advisors as well. Pay attention to the characteristics that all 4 of these amazing people have. And the words and language that came up a lot of times. And so pay attention. All of them talked about curiosity. Some type of curiosity, whether it be their own ability to survive and learn numbers in Azerbaijani or whatnot. But they're curious. They were all persistent. Everyone had to think about what this was going to look like and work on multiple drafts and whatnot. Faith plays a role here, and I'm not speaking from a theological perspective, but faith in themselves, faith in that the door that closes, the window opens, all the things. If that's a religious space for you, fabulous. If it's not, but still faith in yourself or faith in something bigger in a destiny or of sorts. And the one thing that is, you know, the least sexiest thing of the world that you talk about, but all of them mentioned mentorship at least 5 times. I was keeping a tick store. At least 5 times. Brenda said it the most. At least 5 times. You need to have mentors, and that your mentors they can be peers, but they typically need people who talk the talk and walk the walk. So faculty, of course, are always going to be here. Faculty you've never met, go talk to them. People in industry and in the careers you want to be a part of, but talk to people smarter than you and people who have experienced more than you to get advice and to get feedback. And as Brenda rightly said, sometimes hard feedback and pushbacks. It will make you a better candidate, it will make you a stronger applicant in general, but it'll also make you more effective when you get on the ground, whatever you're doing. So those are the pieces I wanted to, and to thank all of you for the time I've gotten to spend with all of you. Again, I never had Kate in class, but I heard lots about Kate, and Alex has stuck with me forever. And I don't know if they remember, but my first professional guest lecture was at Miami-Dade College when I went to visit my dear friend and spoke to them about, I think, refugee camps when they were wee little babies.
I was really impressed.
Good say, thanks. The last piece I will tell you is that if you are interested in study abroad, we have a plethora of options. And if you are wanting to look at things that are faculty-led and cost-effective or various different ways, I'm going to plug Dr. Westfall is going to be leading a Maymester Germany memory and
Collective memory in Germany and Austria.
collective memory in Germany and
US, it's a comparative course.
awesome. U.S. and Germany collective memory, and they will be in Germany over with soon to be Dr. Evan Casey this Maymester, and then I did it after he graduated, but I promised his class, Alex's class, that I would get an Africa study abroad. I'm late, but we're coming back to it. And so Marian was awarded the Fulbright Hayes. So Fulbright is Department of State Department? Fulbright Hayes is Department of Education. They're very particular on the differences. So we have a $145,000 grant. So this coming summer, all of June and 1 week in July, I'll be able to take 18 students, 100% funded, 5 weeks in Kenya and Tanzania. So you're going to be hearing more about that and other opportunities as well. So if you're not drawn to Zanzibar, because you're crazy, there are other places you can go, reach out, and explore your options. Thank you guys for showing up, and it was a small crowd, but hopefully it was meaningful. I'm excited to work with all of you, and a big round of applause, please, for our amazing panelists. I'm so excited to see what you guys